Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Brad Brown and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
Before we start, this is actually going to be a phenomenal episode, but
yeah.
I wanted to know if you wanted to do your Sting impression like you just did before we hit
I'm
record.
just not going to.
Dang, you should have heard it. Ross, next time you join us for the episode, we're gonna have Jason do it.
Well, and remember, that was actually an homage to a Friends episode.
Really?
Which was an homage to a Sting song.
Yes, Roxanne.
Yes.
And he's saying the start of Roxanne, saying Ross can, and it was actually really well done.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I think it was really well done.
So everybody,
refuse to do it. So.
I refuse to do it publicly. You know the deal. Go pause this episode. Google Ross can Friends, and then come on back. All right. So
pivot.
Okay, pivot. Okay.
Okay. There's our friends shtick for the week. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Cosmere. So we had Merrick Moyer on a couple weeks back.
Yes.
And phenomenal really cool episode.
Yep.
And you know what's funny is I inadvertently had must have pushed Gemini because I use an Android phone and I hit Cosmere and literally it was giving me on Gemini like a dissertation on Cosmere as this was going on.
That's not spooky at all. No,
that's
cool.
Yeah. But Merrick,
so much fun talking with Merrick, and then like days after we talked with him, he connected us with Ross.
Yeah. And little did we know that we would have such a fun time talking with Ross.
So Ross is just the nicest person, first of all.
Nicest person.
Like
yes.
Just such a fun, gentle, joyful person with this infectious smile. And he spent this time with us talking about this game he gets to design and he loves. And I mean, it was pretty cool.
I will say that if you've never played an RPG before, Ross, if you sit with Ross and hear him talk about this stuff, you will want to play.
Yeah.
Just after 10 minutes, listen. Yeah. Just after 10 minutes.
In all fairness, though, we already wanted to play Cosmere.
Right?
It's this game based on Brandon Sanderberg's
Sanderson.
Did I just do it? Oh my God, help me out here.
Sanderberg.
I don't know where I'm going.
I don't know where you were going. Sandberg Hall? Were you channeling a university here or what?
Okay, so we're peeling back the fourth wall.
Well, let's just be perfectly honest. Just be perfectly honest. Tonight we are
recording.
Upcoming.
Yeah, this is the third set of recordings we've done in the past 2 hours. It's getting a little late. We're getting a little punchy, and every one of these is totally different than the one that came before it.
And we love and what's funny is that we love talking about each individual episode, but we'll get these little mix-ups in what we say. Periodically, you may not even hear it. You may hear a stop and start on something and then Jason will know to make an edit, and so you won't ever even know it. But
and I'm just gonna leave it in. It's just
maybe you'll leave this one in because now we have the explanation here. But but we literally we're doing intro outros tonight for our guests because very quickly we both have busy schedules.
Yeah, we're running into a bottleneck for the schedule, and it just happened that we've had these phenomenal guests, like 3 in not even 2 weeks.
I mean, we just lucked out, and Ross was the culmination for us to be able to have Ross join us and be able to talk and get in depth on
so cool
the Sanderson verse and then talk about Cosmere and the RPG and kind of his genesis into writing and all of that.
I mean, he has an incredible story. And of course, Cosmere is based on these incredible stories, these quote unquote worlds of Stormlight and Mistborn. that are just so interesting. And what attracted us was the chance, and we get a little bit into this. Don't worry, Ross promised he's going to come back, and he's
Hmm.
coming back. But this notion that the game is built around hard magic as a mechanic. And
Yes.
oh man, I mean it's all so interesting. And as this drops, this episode, we won't be far away from the first PDF officially releasing.
Yeah.
So
Of the
don't be surprised.
Mistborn RPG, right?
The Stormlight RPG,
Stormlight RPG,
right?
Stormlight.
Because Mist Stormlight is 2025, Mistborn is going to be 2026.
Yes.
So don't be surprised at all if late summer, early fall, the two of us are talking about maybe even dedicating an episode to the Cosmere mechanic game, whatever. Yeah, it would
Oh
not.
yeah.
Don't be surprised.
Well, don't be surprised. I mean, don't be surprised because it will happen,
It's gonna happen.
and
Yeah.
because we want to talk about it.
Ross Leiser is an asexual geek, math-loving theater and choir kid and forever GM, by choice, who specializes in player-facing design. He's worked many jobs from math teacher to grocery store pizza maker to flooring wholesaler to landscaper, but he's a lot happier making games full-time. Since March of 2017, he's operated under the brand Outlandish Adventure Productions, with products that spark whimsy and capture the imagination, but with a serious focus on system syntax, narrative mechanical cohesion, inter-party balance, and positive gameplay experiences for both the player and game master. His body of work primarily includes independent third-party supplemental products for D&D 5e on the Dungeon Masters Guild, but now he's a senior designer on the core design team of the award-winning Cosmere RPG as a decade-long Sanderfan who's utterly obsessed with the Cosmere's magic systems and having an absolute blast working alongside the most wonderful team in the world.
After talking for about 20 minutes and missing probably a good chunk of convo, we finally decided to hit record. Ross, thanks for joining us
Yeah.
tonight.
This is only
Even
going to
though
be
we,
a 5-minute episode because we've covered
because
all of the good
you
stuff
know,
already. Yeah.
not even close. We probably still have another 2 hours worth of content that we're going to try to cram into an hour here.
Thank you both
But
so much for having me. I'm
Oh,
so
we're
excited to
yeah,
be
thrilled
here as
to have
well.
you here. Are
oh
you kidding?
yeah, and there's so much we can talk about that we've already like in email come up with different threads of
Yeah,
conversations of things
apparently
that we
Ross
can
is the
talk.
kind of guy who like already on email, like he's telling us, like giving us background, like getting into like thoughtful, meaningful stuff, and it's like, oh, is it Wednesday yet? I want
I'm
Yeah,
to
a
talk to you.
very
literally.
excitable conversationalist. I think everyone I spent the entirety of Gen Con last year in the Brotherwise room that I was not being paid to work in other than the demo sessions I
Oh,
was
that's
scheduled
cool.
to
Yeah,
run. Literally just because the energy in there was so amazing. I talked to so many
that's
fans
cool.
about what I love about our system because it was the first time anyone in the public had gotten access to playing it
Oh,
at Gen Con last year. So there were so many questions, and it was so fun to be in there. I had to drink so much throat coat. I have a mug of it right
nice.
now.
Okay, so let me pitch us off with a question, and I know, I mean, there's so much to talk about, and we'll get there, but based on just our chat right before we hit record and like our email chat that's been going on for days now, which has been really lovely, really interesting. I think a great place to start with whatever you're comfortable sharing would be, because you're obviously deeply affiliated with the upcoming Cosmere RPG.
Very, yes.
But before we jump into that, because we want to talk a lot about that and the mechanics and all that good stuff, how did you end up working on Cosmere?
All right, so this is going to be a bit of a story because
Yeah, go.
I love telling this story because there's so much serendipity to it,
Yeah.
and it's actually going to start before I graduated college over 10 years ago. uh, so I was first introduced to the Cosmere by my mom, who
Nice.
is a voracious reader. We have very similar tastes in media. And she read a book called Mistborn, The Final Empire. And she said, Ross, you need to read this. You are going to be obsessed with the magic system.
Oh,
Uh, and I've always been a huge fan of magic systems. I love fantasy for that reason and interesting ways technology is used in sci-fi too. And I think Brandon Sanderson puts it best when he says that the Cosmere is fantasy, but with sci-fi world building. And I
yeah.
think that's what makes it so interesting for people, as really kind of a buy-in element. Um, but so I get really deep into it. I read all of the available Mistborn books in less than a month.
Oh,
I was so
wow.
deeply into it. Went straight into Stormlight when I got after it, which is still my favorite book series of all, especially with the recently released Wind and Truth, which I think brings the first half of the Stormlight saga to a remarkably climactic conclusion.
Wow.
Um, and so, cut to I am now working out. I am a teacher trying to find a permanent position,
Yep.
and I begin working on the Dungeon Masters Guild, creating like
Yeah.
mostly player-facing content. My own full classes. I made 9 of those. I began collaborating with a person that I actually mentored with named Benjamin Huffman.
Yeah.
He was the guy who released the probably the single most popular DM's Guild class of all time, the Pugilist, and I found
Okay.
him on Patreon, supported him at his highest tier, which was send me in your stuff so that I can critique it for you, basically.
Oh, that's cool.
And he apparently liked my stuff, my design sensibilities, and we started making a series together called the Complete Handbook series, where it was just creating new magic items, new feats, new spells, new subclasses for a whole bunch of D&D 5e official classes. And that culminated in a project called the Ultimate Adventurer's Handbook, where it's literally the same length page wise as the official 5e player's handbook. It has over 100 subclasses in it,
Oh my God.
because it kind of brought the entire series together with updated stuff for that time. And I just got really into it. I started my own Patreon, started doing monthly designs that were based
Wow.
on patron recommendations. And throughout all this time, I was still reading the Cosmere in the background and very excited about it. When I
Yeah.
got to the point where I had no Cosmere left, I realized that it was this beautiful, interconnected tapestry of a universe. It is not a multiverse, it is one kind of galaxy that can be traversed by a special magical means. I don't need to go too deep into it right now.
Yeah.
But I decided that I needed to get a better look at the full picture. So I began a year and a half long reread of the entire Cosmere in speculated chronological order.
Oh, wow. Jeez,
And
Ross.
I
Calculated chronological order, you said.
speculated,
Wait,
yes.
Okay.
say more about that though. What do we mean by that?
So there was not until Wind and Truth, we didn't
Huh?
have a super definitive
Okay.
timeline
Okay.
of
Yeah.
when certain series took place compared to other series.
Okay, yeah, relative to one another. Okay.
But I wanted to see, kind of get more of the hints of what was happening in the background because Sanderson is a
Yeah.
master of foreshadowing
Right. So
and seeding his
you read these
beasts.
interleaved across the series on this reread.
Yes.
Jeez.
Like jumping back and forth between Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, Stormlight, and the many novellas of the Arcanum Unbounded collection. This is before the secret projects have released, which are a whole other $40 million Kickstarter that Sanderson was a part of. But when I finished that, I just finished the last currently available Cosmere book. 2 years late, sorry, 2 weeks later, calls went out for designers for what was at the time the Stormlight RPG.
That's cool.
And I'm like, I feel enormously qualified for this right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to mention, it is a series that I had wanted to make TTRPG content for. On my Patreon, there's actually a Way of the Feruchemist Monk and a Oath of the Windrunner Paladin, which are both references to Cosmere stuff.
Yep.
And so I applied. I actually couldn't find the application link at first, so I went to the Brotherwise Games contact page and left just the most passionate cover letter of my life. I got back.
Right.
Johnny O'Neill, creative director of the Cosmere RPG, got back to me himself
Nice.
to give me a link to apply, and I never heard back.
Yep. Yep.
Which is not how most people think the story would go from there. This was in September. I submitted this application. I was told that we would probably hear back by November. November came and went. Didn't get an email. I'm sure they were swamped in applicants.
Hmm.
Uh, Things get lost in the shuffle. I
Yep.
understand.
Yep.
Cut to April when I received an email from the at the time project manager of what was known as the Stormlight RPG at the time,
Hmm.
Anthony Joyce Rivera, saying, "Hey, we're looking for pre-alpha playtesters. You interested?" So literally, I kind of went in with this mentality of if I'm going to be a playtester,
Yep.
I'm going to be the best playtester they have
Yep.
and see if it can create any networking opportunities.
Good for you.
So
Mm.
in 1 week, I organized 3 different playtest sessions and ran all with
Yeah.
different groups of people.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that Anthony Joyce Rivera asked if he could drop, if we were doing any online sessions, if we dropped him a link, he tried to see if he could drop in to answer any questions we had and interact with us. Luckily, he could on my very last playtest session, and I was able to talk to him about all the insights. And my favorite thing about this is I paid very close attention to this album, to this pre-alpha packet, to the point where I noticed that the section that was about the Stormlight abilities was not called Stormlight or Radiance or Surges. It was called Investiture. And so I asked him, is this more than just a Stormlight RPG?
Right.
Because I noticed this intricacy about the way the chapter was structured.
Nice.
And he had to smile and lie to me through his teeth.
Mhm.
But it turns out that that very week, the very next week, Johnny had a list of names of people he was considering contacting about
Yeah.
a 2-month opportunity to work on the Stormlight RPG. Showed it to Anthony Rivera. Anthony recognized my name. And that Wednesday, I was in an interview with Johnny O'Neill.
Neat.
Uh, and I was initially signed for a 2-month contract to, surprise, surprise, work on some of the Radiant paths and surges.
Hmm.
I am obsessed with the magic systems of the Cosmere, the invested arts. The Radiant paths and surges, especially, are some of my favorite magic in anything ever.
Hmm.
So when they needed a person that would work on all of that for the 2 most iconic of the Radiant Orders, Windrunner, which is represented by the perspective and probably main protagonist of the series, Kaladin, and Lightweaver, who was another major perspective character, Shallan. I was over the moon. And what they didn't know is that all of this was happening in the midst of the OGL crisis.
Yeah.
So
Man.
I had, for the past year and a half at this time, been working on a hardcover release that was the biggest
Oh.
solo project I had ever endeavored in my entire life. I spent more
Yeah.
than $4,000 on it out of my own pocket.
Jeez.
And because of delays due to the print on demand process,
Hmm.
I couldn't release it until 2 months after the OGL.
Yeah.
And it is still to this day the biggest financial failure of my entire
Well, give it time. You got decades ahead of you.
life. And But so what they didn't
Man.
know is that they were offering me this contract position, assuming that I had full-time employment, but I was sustaining myself full-time prior to the OGL crisis
Yeah.
on my DM's Guild passive income and my Patreon. Because I was
Wow.
actually, I almost every thing I've ever released on the DM's Guild is a gold bestseller or higher.
Okay.
So I was I was pretty successful on the Dungeon Masters Guild.
Big time.
And so I was making a pretty good passive income because the weird thing about the DM's Guild at the time was every time you released something, it put more eyes on your past stuff.
Yeah.
So those things would sell better every single time you released your product.
Yeah. Man.
Uh, so, uh, but I was suddenly out of work. I had been looking for over a month trying to find a system that spoke to me the same way
Hmm.
that D&D 5e had. And then in comes this opportunity. for the Stormlight RPG.
Yeah.
Here's the
And
serendipity of it
Yeah.
all.
yeah, unbelievably serendipitous, the timing of it, no
Amazing.
doubt. We get to my first month review of working with lead designer Andrew Fisher. Was pretty much my only point of contact on the team when I
Mhm.
was doing this work. But Anthony Joyce Rivera called me in for my 1 month review, and we had a chat, and he said, "So, do you have any questions for me?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm not really getting like too much feedback. Uh, we're just kind of like talking. I make the changes, we move on, and things are going pretty well. But I just want to know, like, how am I doing for you all?" And he goes, "Well, I'm going to be honest with you. You're 3 weeks ahead of where we needed you to be, because they did not realize I was working on this full time when they did not intend for me to be." And then he kind of got a look on his face, and he asked me, "What's your bandwidth like?" And I said, "I will make bandwidth for this project."
Yeah.
In the back of my mind, screaming, "They don't have to know I'm not working on anything
That's
else right
right.
now."
That's right.
And he said, "I'm going to recommend you to be ascended to the core design team."
Cool. Yeah.
And so I've been working on that for almost 2 years now.
Man, oh man.
And the team is unbelievably amazing. I love everybody. The leadership, fantastic. And
Nice.
just the work is the most satisfying work I've ever done. It's truly been a dream project, and I am so,
That's wonderful.
so lucky to be
That's so cool.
here.
That's man.
Succinct, but that's the kind of like, just how it all kind of fell into place.
Mhm.
Um, I just love hearing that kind of
Yeah.
story as to how it plays out like that, you know. Um,
I just happened to be the kind of designer they were looking for at the time, uh, which is very player focused, very like player facing, especially with the ability to create full like playable progressions of things, and also my obsession with the invested arts of the Cosmere and all of that. It's just right place, right time, and it was unbelievable.
So cool. Okay, so thanks for sharing that. That's just lovely. It's just really like it's just really lovely. So let's talk Cosmere itself for a moment. So we were talking about this before we clicked record, and you've been obviously coming back to this again and again. The magic system,
Hmm.
kind of writ large. Something you said really hooked me, and in fact, this is why like I decided to read Mistborn to begin with, and just flipping through the first pages, it's like, well, I'll be darned. There's a scientific rationale, so to speak, for this magic, and that really like Brad and I've talked about this over the years. Like I really like. Not just like the high magic, I like hard magic, right?
Hmm.
But I didn't know that
Which,
was
by the
a
way, is a term. It was a term coined by Brandon Sanderson. I didn't know this until
Okay,
recently.
so there you go, because I'd never even heard that
yeah,
until we started learning about Cosmere. But
Hmm.
it's completely hooked me, like this notion of I could like I mean I love sci-fi. I'm a scientist, like that's just how I think, but I still like to play fantasy time to time. But in Cosmere, there's a system. It's not like, you just have a ball of fire and you throw a missile and whatnot. There's a really logical system and
Hmm.
the weird thing is it makes sense. And if you can accept like the one fundamental conceit, for example, that these elements matter in this way, like forget about the
Hmm.
metabolism, right? Like we don't know how that works, right? But that's how Star Trek works too. Right? It's if you can accept like this one little piece, everything really feels like real.
Yeah. And the really fascinating thing is that Brandon actually does work with physics consultants
Oh,
to
that's
make
cool.
sure that when other than the magical interferences,
Yeah.
like the laws of physics are maintained. So, like,
Yeah.
for example, there is a power in Mistborn called iron ferrochrome. And with that, you can store and later tap your sword weight. So a person that is very light because they're storing weight and is then like going jumping through on something and then something taps weight in the middle of that jump, they slow down because of conservation of momentum.
Nice.
and vice
Yeah.
versa. So it's he really does bring the science into the magic, and it makes a lot of sense when you realize that this is like a very long saga, like the Cosmere, that the individual books are longer than your average, yes,
Yes.
but he has plans decades from
Well,
now.
and so
Like
this
we're
is
eventually going to the space age of the Cosmere when it will basically turn into sci fantasy.
intriguing. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Ross, you don't know Jason well enough yet, but that was the look of the light bulb going
like back in the
on.
day, I played all the way through Civilization on the computer so I could get to Alpha Centauri. And even though it was just the cutscene at the end. So to that point, there's something I want to come back to, but to that point then, Ross. So and again, Brad and I want to make sure like we're staying, be behind the line, right? We don't want to ask what we're not supposed to ask, um, but the whole Cosmere system for the RPG, it's a quote living
Yes.
RPG system, which I think is kind of what you're getting at, right? That the RPG is intended to evolve. So I mean, whatever you can tell us about that, because obviously, like we understand, well, gaming systems can expand, but it sounds from what we've been seeing online that, from all of you guys, from Brotherwise and whatnot, it sounds like this potentially is more than this, that it doesn't just like expand in terms of product, but like maybe the RPG itself will evolve in some way as Sanderson's story continues to evolve.
So yeah, there are limited things that I can talk about
Yeah,
on
of
this, but I
course.
can tell you that this system was designed very much with forethinking in mind. The core plot weaver system, as it's called, and it is a system that we are going to be releasing without the Cosmere IP attached to it. We're going to have an OGL and an SRD
Nice.
and all of
Oh,
that, so that
outstanding.
Awesome. We
people
love
can
that.
make their own plot weaver
Mhm.
worlds. It was designed to be able to facilitate fantasy, science fiction, horror. Like we have really fascinating narrative systems and mechanics in place to make sure that you can adapt it to almost any genre you need
Yet another threat to employment.
to
Yep.
Yep.
fit.
Yep. To our
And
employment,
To
we're
our
talking about.
employment,
oh,
right?
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 No, no, no. It's
Yeah.
it's and possibly marriage too. Um,
Mm.
yeah. Oh my God.
uh, so so we have this wildly adaptable system that
Oh,
we
very
and
cool.
you'll be able to see like elements of how you can adapt things
Yeah.
in terms of when we move from the Stormlight books, from our Stormlight RPG
Yep.
material books
Yep.
to the Mistborn books.
Hmm.
Because Radiants, which are like the magic users in Stormlight,
Yeah.
have a very particular way their magic works.
Right.
And then Allomancy and Feruchemy not only work different from that, but they
Hmm.
work different from each other.
Right.
And so we have very distinct magic systems that are happening in these
Oh.
books. And
And
yet,
okay.
and yet, they have these elements of overlap because
Okay.
every invested art follows the same core fundamental principles, just
Hmm.
refracted through the properties of what Shard, capital S Shard, basically
Yep.
God,
Yep. Yep.
is in the area, and the properties of
Uh-huh.
the planet itself.
So presumably at all of these will have at least some shared elements of the mechanics.
Yes. So there's a we do have a lot of very intentional overlaps in certain
Yep. Okay.
areas. So,
Mhm.
for example, when a radiant breathes in Stormlight, and Stormlight is like a glowing gaseous form of investiture that
Okay.
people who have access to that magic can breathe in and they literally glow with it. That's why they're called
Hmm.
radiants. When they have Stormlight breathed in, their strength, their speed, their endurance and durability all improve. They heal faster and all of that. And so there are certain core elements of invested healing, invested enhancement that hold true in almost every system of invested arts in some way, to the point where we actually took the enhance action that all Radiants get access to and the regenerate action they all get access to, and put versions of that in the pure allomancy path for
Yeah.
Mistborn.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
so,
But I'm
so
watching Brad process. So
I'm fascinated by this because like we talked about, we were we've been a little late to the game to the Sanderson verse, and just the idea of this this RPG and the idea of there being a sandbox version of it
That's really cool.
that is
Yeah.
that just blows
Um,
blows my
I
mind.
I I haven't. Well, that's not okay. I was looking at the website earlier today because I was like, because of the one the email. I was going to the Star Kickstarter, and then the backer kit and all that. And I was like, it's apparently it's not too late to order. And so I was looking at that stuff, but. But I didn't go down the rabbit hole in like the other website and like the information. So I want to ask a question, but forgive me because I just don't know as of the past month or so what's up and what's not yet shared. I don't know what it looks like. So if you can't say anything, that's fine. But I'm wondering what can you tell us in general about the mechanic of Cosmere?
So there's a lot. We actually released an 80-page beta document when we were in open beta.
Okay.
So I can talk, and we also had beta materials released for the public via Demiplane that we made characters and
But
all of
the
that too.
beta's not out there anymore, right?
No, that has
Yeah.
been removed to give time for our digital partners to
Yeah.
update it all
Okay, yeah, I know. I've
for
been
the
looking
digital
for that.
release.
Okay, okay,
So there's archived versions of it that are out on the
okay,
internet.
okay.
I know that they have it in the official Cosmere RPG Discord. I'm not sure where to find a link for that personally, just because I've been in it since it
Yeah,
was created,
it's cool.
but since before it was open to the public,
Of course.
because
It's
I'm
not
on the team.
publicly available, but if people
Well,
happen to go, they might be able to find it out there
I mean,
somewhere.
people
But
join it all the time, so that link to it must be somewhere.
Must be somewhere. Okay.
Um,
Mm,
but uh, basically, it is a D20 system because it was built
nice.
with the idea of being an on ramp for TTRPG fans to get into RPG to get into the Cosmere,
Yeah,
and for your Cosmere fans to get into TTRPGs.
nice.
So we built
Hmm.
it. We intentionally
Yeah,
built it with a lot of familiar elements from other
that
systems.
makes
It is a
sense.
D20 system.
Hmm.
It uses your modifiers,
Hmm.
uh, very, and it also uses a very similar action system to Pathfinder in terms of the
Okay.
action points, but
Hmm.
it also has a narrative die similar to like FFG Star Wars called
Right.
the plot die.
oh, there you go,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes.
Jason
Yeah.
loves that.
And
I mean,
some of
Andrew
that's
Fisher, our lead designer, was also the lead designer on FFG Star Wars.
right. That's
So
right. Which is one of my absolute favorite mechanics. Yeah.
So yeah, the plot die is, I think, an evolution of that.
Hmm.
It's in general very simple. It's a D6 with four different sides.
Nice.
Well, where you have blanks. Basically,
Yep.
whenever there's like a really tense moment or a mechanic calls
Hmm.
for it, the GM can raise the stakes, and that just means you add the plot die to your test roll. If you
Yes.
roll a blank,
Yep.
fate does not intervene with that roll. Things
Hmm.
resolve as normal. It's fine. If
Yep.
you get an
That's
opportunity,
awesome.
great, and a positive tangential benefit is happens in addition to whatever your test result was. Even on a failure, a positive thing can happen, or on a positive result, a tangential
Yeah.
positive thing happens.
Very, very Genesis narrative feel to
Mhm.
that, right? Of
Yeah,
just flexing it. Yeah.
but honestly, one of my favorites is actually the two different complications
Okay.
on it. There is a +2 complication and a +4 complication, where when you roll this on the plot die, a tangential negative thing happens,
Hmm.
but you add either the +2 or the +4 to your d20.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Uh,
that's clever.
and what I also really like is that the opportunities and complications are baked really deeply into the system to the point where a natural 1 on your d20 is also a complication, and a natural 20 is an opportunity.
Nice. I like it.
So we have so many things that key into the opportunity and complications, special ways that can be spent for certain mechanics,
Hmm.
or we have the general uses you can always use, which is you can give an ally advantage on their next test. You can regain our mental resource focus with it if you can't think of anything else to do, or you can just have a positive influential effect on the narrative, or the GM can add a complication to the narrative. So it takes a little bit to get used to if you're not
Yeah.
used to that kind of narrative gaming.
Yeah.
But we like to think of ourselves as a narrative game with some crunch
Nice.
rather than
Hmm.
like a really crunchy
Hmm.
system. There's a
Oh, I
lot of
like this.
so what one of our major goals when designing this was you have so much crunch and options when making your character. It's an extremely fluid talent system where we
Okay.
you don't have a linear path like in Pathfinder
Yeah.
D&D.
Yeah.
You have talent trees that are I like
Hmm.
to describe them as like Skyrim
Okay.
where you have different prerequisites for taking
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
talents, but you start with a single key talent
Yeah.
that then branches off
So I
into
mean,
other talents you can buy.
again, not unlike what FFG did, maybe. In
Yeah,
okay, yeah, yeah, where you're not locked in.
but
Oh,
also the system is designed with multipathing in mind.
okay. That's nice.
So yeah, you can freely, whenever you have a level, just start a new path instead of rather than
Oh,
continue
that's
into the one you
cool.
currently have.
That's cool.
And one of the major reasons for that is because the way radiants work in Stormlight, no one in their life starts as a radiant. It is impossible.
Okay.
And so you actually can't even become a radiant until level 2 at the very
Interesting.
earliest in our
Okay.
system.
Yeah.
And that's to represent that everyone has a life before they become a radiant, just like in the books.
Yeah. Interesting. So, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I wanted to backtrack just because talking about like the play tests and things like that. When you were going back to when you were talking about the play testing, um, who did you get to do that? Were they readers of the Cosmere? Did you put together folks that hadn't done it before? I was just kind of curious who you kind of gathered to do it.
So
Um,
it has expanded as we've gone on. Because of course no
no,
one
I was talking about like when you were doing like your first play test
With
oh
before
the
you were
your
getting
alpha.
playtest.
asked. Yeah,
Hmm.
with your alpha.
So it was just people I knew.
Okay.
It was very pre-alpha, like the NDA was very tight
Okay.
Okay.
on this because they did not want this stuff getting out.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was just literally people that were my friends. I did 2 online sessions, 1 in-person session. And the thing
Okay.
is, I at that time was the only person in my friend group who had read the Cosmere.
That
Okay.
okay, that was what I was
Hmm.
curious
Hmm.
about.
That said, multiple of the people I ran it for are now very deep into their own reads of the Cosmere because they love
Not
the
surprising.
setting so much.
Uh-huh.
And uh, but getting back to the idea of when I got into the multipathing and all that, with a lot of options in character creation and when you're leveling up, but
Yeah.
in play, everyone is shocked at how smooth it was. It is very crunchy
Yeah.
at like in between sessions when you're making all your choices, but when you're actually at the table, it runs buttery smooth.
Okay.
No, I kind of like that. So like the session zeros and the half session, the in between sessions, but when you're in the game, it's as the game master and all that, is it is do you does it you know do you feel like there's like lots of planning beforehand? Does it feel kind of like buttery smooth in terms like planning and things like that? Just generally speaking for you, you know.
So I will say that your first time creating a character, it
Yeah.
can be a little overwhelming. And as a GM, you certainly do need to have like at least it's good to read our rules because there are certain things that people coming from D&D, coming from Pathfinder, will not be used to.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
are willing to leave more things like up to GM fiat than a lot of those systems are because we are a narrative first system and our mechanics exist to facilitate narratives that make you feel like you're in a Sanderson book.
Yeah.
Um, but so there are certain times people want clarification where it's kind of the ethos of our system not to give that kind of prescriptive
Yeah. Yeah.
clarification. And that's definitely been a sticking point we've had with certain public and private playtesters
Yeah.
in the system. And we've tried to smooth out as many of those wrinkles as we could. Uh, but I'll tell you, once you're used to making a character, um, I've made like a level 18 character in 45 minutes before.
Jeez. Okay.
And we're talking like full magic character.
Yeah.
Um, and and I can often, and this comes down to my own Cosmere knowledge as well, because I'm very steeped in the system. I've read the books, I know a lot about the worlds, but I can usually plan a 3 hour session in about 15 minutes.
Wow.
Jinx.
I literally have notes here for a session of Star Trek Adventures I'm planning for Brad and some of the other guys, and I spent like 2 days and I don't even have a page of notes, and I'm still just trying to figure out the backdrop. So,
I mean,
yeah,
part of that is also because I'm a very improvisational GM. Like
still.
I very much kind of just give a setup, have some ideas of where I want things to go, but then I just react to what my players do.
Yeah, yeah.
But we have written our adversaries with very much like there is a tactics section attached to every single adversary in the game
Oh,
that
that's
tells you
cool.
exactly their personality of how they fight and how they tend to open combat scenes and stuff like that.
Have you ever read any of the books by Keith Alman?
I have not
Oh, I
actually.
just it's well, first of all, highly recommended. But like he's written whole books on this for D&D, and you guys are writing this right into the material. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I will say one of my favorite aspects of combat in our system is the way initiative works. So D&D,
Yeah.
Pathfinder, you roll a d20,
Yep.
you add your dexterity modifier or
Mm-hmm.
anything else,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't really have control of when you go. Every single round of combat in our system is a choice. You and all of the adversaries choose either a fast turn or a slow turn. And then combat progresses PC fast turns, NPC fast turns, PC slow turns, NPC slow turns. So you can go fast and guarantee you go for all the enemies, but you only get 2 action points for the turn. Or you can go
Oh,
slow and get 3 action points, but risk the enemies disrupting your intent. So it's very
interesting.
strategic, and
Yeah.
players in the characters in the phases can take their turns in any order. So you can facilitate combos with your fellow players.
Okay.
And if you leave enemies the chance to act, they could also combo you. So
Right, right.
it's extremely strategic, extremely narrative. You always have to make that decision, and it always feels like a decision. It's never obvious.
Oh, that's really
That's
non-linear. That's
that's
like
cool.
yeah.
That's unique.
What's also really cool that I love. We believe we borrowed aspects of this from Shadows of the Demon Lord. It has a similar sort of initiative system, but the cool thing is that boss enemies act on both fast and slow turns.
Interesting.
So it's kind of a way, and they also have the kind of legendary action like ability that
Right.
they can spend their focus to take. So you really are having parity between players and
Yeah.
bosses when it comes to action economy in a way that you do not see in D&D.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, let's talk world building for a sec. Obviously, it's a really big world to play in already. Um,
Very.
so my
Well,
so
world is in quotations
quote
here.
big time quotations,
Yeah.
Yes.
but
Worlds.
worlds, my
Yeah.
worlds, yeah.
I think you said galaxy. I don't know if that was on or off before we hit record or after, but really it's galaxy building really at
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
well,
point.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean, all right? In terms of this remarkably rich and evolving setting,
Hmm.
right? That's going to take us into the future, both our time and story time. So, so I'll give let me contextualize this question and this thought. So, like one of the things when it comes to playing sci-fi, because like I like playing in my favorite IPs. So whether I'm playing in Star Trek, whether and Brad, I know you feel the same way about this. Whether I'm playing in Star Trek or Star Wars or something else, I think we're both very careful, like when we're GMing, to not break canon. Right? Because we don't want to, like, I don't want to
Hmm.
invalidate the actual story because of something stupid I do in my plans. And then how
It's
Hmm.
do I,
just kind of
yeah,
we like to play and not we like to play within the timeline but not break the timeline.
right, right.
Hmm.
Because we want it all to be like head canon, if right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But in terms of Cosmere, then there, I mean, there are. I mean, there are even more stories than Star Wars has these days, right? There are so many stories, so many books, and it's not like, well, maybe they'll come out with the book or a movie in a decade if we're lucky. It's right, Sanderson's actively writing, like you
Hmm.
said before we
He
recorded.
gives progress updates every single
Right.
week on the percentage of the way
It's
he is towards the project.
the transparency is remarkable. But as a player or as a GM, um, like how and some GMs don't care about this at all. But how, for those of us who do, like, how does one play in that sandbox, but not have to worry about breaking canon? You know what I mean? Especially if you
Yeah,
don't know the world. I mean, it's such a big world, air quotes.
yeah.
But like, how does one navigate that safely?
So Sanderson had a very, very clear mandate for us on this.
Hmm.
Everything we, as the RPG team, do
Yep.
must be canon. Every bit of
Right.
lore in our books,
Yep.
every adventure that we write, it must fall in line with Cosmere canon.
Yep.
But fans should not feel constrained by canon if they do not want to.
Right.
There is a very prominent sidebar in the GM chapter that when you play your game, this is your Roshar
Mhm.
for Stormlight or your Scadrial for Mistborn. Like you can talk to your group. Do you want
Nice.
to stick very, very close to the story events? In
Mm.
which case, our world guide has a whole bunch of beautifully fleshed out places that get mentioned in the books, but you never visit.
Yeah, really cool.
That we work
Yeah.
with
So
Dragonsteel to
there's
flesh out.
there's a major solution to that question right there. Yeah,
So you
okay.
could so, but there you also, if you want to play through the canon events of the books,
Yeah.
but you want to be the stars,
Hmm.
feel free to just take away that main perspective
Right.
character and put your character in their place,
Absolutely.
or just change events entirely.
Yep.
Uh, so we want the players to feel empowered to
That's
tell
cool. Yeah.
their own stories, whatever is the most satisfying way for them.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. That's neat. I mean, as it should be, I would be I mean, I think, but play your game. But that's okay. That's very cool. Okay. Yeah. You had mentioned before we clicked record because I brought this up and you were like you haven't seen the half of it obviously, but like the artwork in these books, the
Mm,
layout, like we I mean like I think you already know like our thing is increasingly like RPGs as literature, right? And like
hmm.
Brad and I we like getting down to the nitty-gritty of like the production, the printing,
Yeah,
and again just from the stuff you all have put out online and like the couple flip throughs on YouTube that have been coming out, like the books themselves, the physical books, they look gorgeous.
yeah. Johnny brought a print proof
Hmm.
of uh, of one of them to Dragonsteel Nexus
Hmm.
uh, late last year, and I could not believe how good it felt to hold and to look at. It is the cover is so richly detailed um,
Yeah,
in a way that I've never really seen with an RPG book. But I was telling you a little bit about this before we said we need to stop having this conversation so we can actually get
yes.
recorded and
Yeah,
say
we
the
can
good stuff.
I
record.
think I said that three
Uh,
times, but yeah, yeah.
yes, where Johnny is just absolutely obsessed with commissioning beautiful art. Like
Yeah,
you can
nice.
see it in the Mistborn deck building game too. Like
Okay.
there is an unbelievable amount of original art that was
Wow.
commissioned for that game.
Wow.
We got, I think it's like several hundred pieces of art that were commissioned for Stormlight alone.
That's incredible.
And that was actually because of another one of Brandon's mandates for us that the Stormlight and Mistborn world guides, whatever world guide that we produce, which fleshes out the world, tells you about canon
Hmm. Hmm.
events and
Hmm.
different locations, interesting characters, and has our adversaries in it. Uh, he wanted that to be accessible to fans, not just as an RPG book. He wanted to be as mechanics light as
Yep.
possible
Yep.
and just be a coffee table art book
Hmm.
for Cosmere fans.
See, that's
Ah,
so neat.
RPG
That
is lit right there, or
yeah,
lit
right.
for as RPG right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so and
Neat.
so that's absolutely how the world guide can function.
Hmm.
When we got back the first completed layout of each of the individual books, I can tell you that as a fan, I was sitting there just pawing through this PDF
Yeah,
for hours
that's
uh,
nice.
for both of them.
Yeah,
And when we got to the sections that I was primarily responsible for,
yeah,
and as I said, I'm a big invested arts guy. I have kind of become the invested arts expert on the core design team. That's
nice.
kind of become my role.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I had a big hand in the Radiant paths, which there are 10 of in the books, 9 of them are playable. The 10th one is not playable for very specific reasons that I can't get into without
Hmm.
spoilers.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and then the 10 surges that are shared amongst the Radiant Orders. When I got to those and I saw the art,
Oh, that's
like
cool.
as a fan and as a person that had written this, like I was sobbing with
Neat.
just how incredible all of the Radiant Orders looked and just fully realized, brought to life. Because there are some orders that have not yet featured terribly heavily in the Stormlight novels,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that we know exist. And we actually got the pleasure of working with Dragonsteel to flesh those out too.
Neat.
And so my personal order is the Order of the Stone Lords. This is one of those orders we have not seen a lot of
Hmm.
in the books. So to see this fully realized art of of the order I most identify with in terms of the philosophy behind their oaths,
Yeah.
I got really deeply emotional seeing this
S-
art.
See, that's what literature should do, right? RPG or
Mhm.
not.
Dude,
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
cool.
Ah,
You're getting a chance to after reading these books and then
yeah.
doing what you did where you were doing a deep dive into these and everything, and now getting visuals of this stuff, comparing it to what the visuals were in your head.
hmm
You know, I've
and
been through that with stuff and seeing the comparison, and now in your head now, you're automatically doing a comparison as to what you saw, what your own head visualization was versus what's on art. I mean, that's
yeah,
just
and of course everything was approved and
Yeah, of course.
reviewed and
Yeah.
all that by
Yep.
Dragonsteel. So we're making sure it matches what Brandon
Of
was
course.
picturing
Yeah.
when writing everything. Uh, and yeah,
I
it's really incredible. And for Stormlight especially, this was really important because Scadrial, where Mistborn takes place, yes, there are some fantastical elements to it, but
mhm.
many aspects of it are very familiar
Yeah,
visually to our own world.
right.
Roshar is a deeply alien world,
Okay.
to the point where there's very, very few mammals and birds in general. The world is almost entirely crustacean and insect in terms of the fauna. And the flora also is deeply different from our own because there is a super hurricane that blows through on a semi-regular basis that basically tears things up unless
Okay.
they are. So there is a comment from a character that really stuck with me. So in Roshar, most places in Roshar, the grass is very hardy, grows through rock, and when it
Mhm.
senses vibrations, it into the ground
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
ducks
Mhm.
into the ground really quickly so it can't be ripped out.
Yep.
But there's a place in the far western reaches of Roshar where a character visits a place where the grass is like from our world, and she comments in her own kind of internal monologue of, "Why is this grass so lazy?"
Okay.
do you
Oh, I'm sorry, Brad. Go ahead.
no, go right ahead because I'll kind of wrap it because I have a
Oh,
couple like
okay. So I have to.
lighter questions.
I know we are an audio only podcast, but that said, I've gotta make a comment and then I've got a question, especially because of us talking with Merrick not too long ago. I'm wondering here. First of all, I'm not a t-shirt guy, but it's a gorgeous t-shirt you're wearing. The Brotherwise Games t-shirt. It's a really because it's just good looking, good printing. It harks to the games. That's just really cool. It's
Oh,
been
thank
fun to
you.
look at the whole time. Um, I also notice you have a fairly sizable tattoo.
Oh, yes,
Uh,
yes.
what are those?
So this is a custom dice sword that I got that kind of represents my own foundations in nerddom. Where close to my elbow here on my forearm, I have the Planeswalker symbol from Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
Because Magic is what really got me into. I've been playing it for since I was 8 years old.
Well,
Um,
mm, mm,
so. So I have that, and then and then I have a set of like the
Yeah,
stereotypical six D20, D12,
right.
D10, D8, D6, D4.
Yeah. Okay.
That is it makes up the dice sword, and then inside each of those dice is actually one of the mana symbols from Magic. Starting with green because I was a green stompy player when I
Okay.
was 8 years old, and then moving up in Wooburg order from there and ending in the
Neat.
glass symbol that was introduced with Rise of the Eldrazi,
Mhm.
that Magic set in the Sanderfan block. So it's just kind of like the foundations of my own movement.
That's neat. Yeah.
I love that. I just the brother the I love the t-shirt because I'm a huge owl fan. People can't see it, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I'm
just
with
to
you.
describe real briefly, it's two owls, but like you said, it's two owls, but they're dressed specifically, right?
Yeah, so the two owls in Brother Wise's logo represent the brothers Wise themselves, Johnny O'Neill and Chris O'Neill.
Yeah.
And so what the Johnny one is dressed in a mist cloak, which is an iconic item from Mistborn.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we like to call that one Owl Seer, as a reference to Kelsier, who was a major character in Mistborn. And then the one over here is dressed in uh, a uniform that means quite a lot to me as a diehard Stormlight fan. It's the Bridge 4 uniform. And I kind of get this in here for you, but the owl actually has a tattoo on the head here
Oh,
that is
yeah.
representative of the main character Kaladin's brand that is on his forehead. And so we call that one Kaladin.
Nice. Nice. That's great. I think that's great. I think that's
Before we go, just with everything you got going on with Cosmere and anything like that, do you have time to do any gaming outside of any play
good.
testing and
Yep.
everything that you have going on? Um, you know.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of time to learn or process new systems. Unfortunately, I don't have like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bandwidth for that. But I do
Yeah.
have two ongoing D&D campaigns that I play in. One that I have been running for about 5 years in my magnum opus custom setting
Nice.
uh, that I DM for, and then I play in another one that's an Everin campaign
Okay.
where I am playing a bugbear sorcerer that has been alone. And I also am I play Magic. I've been playing Commander mostly for over a decade now.
Well,
Uh, I have a collection of board games off screen you can't see. And yeah, I do play a fair number of video games as well. Been really into Pokemon Nuzlocke.
Okay.
Uh, for the most part. For people who don't know what a Nuzlocke is, it's a type of Pokemon challenge run where you are only allowed to catch the first Pokemon you encounter on each route that you visit. And if that Pokemon faints, it is gone. So it is a way of adding challenge to a Pokemon playthrough that
mhm.
I find very compelling, and it brought my joy back to playing Pokemon
Oh, that's
games
nice.
uh,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
and all of
cool.
that.
Yeah. It has been so much fun talking to you, Ross. Thank you so much for wasting time with us tonight. It's just, it's absolutely fascinating. Yeah, there's obviously so much more to talk about.
Mhm.
And there will
And I'd be
obviously
happy
be.
to come back.
Oh,
Please, we would
you
love it. Plan on it.
yes. Yes.
Plan. Yeah.
We've only like just like hit the tip of the iceberg and what we could chat about. So
Mhm.
yes, definitely.
Yeah, especially I think especially as soon as as things do start to like release and come out and we're able to talk more about it, that would be especially through the literature aspect of the
Yeah,
RPG itself would be really
yeah.
cool.
So I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the
Yeah,
fact that the digital Stormlight release is happening on July 23rd.
very good.
So
Wow, that's soon. I guess I didn't
So
realize
yeah.
that it was.
so as this drops, just a tad over 3 weeks away. So
Mhm.
listen up, people. You know what to
Yeah,
do.
Wow.
and then thankfully, uh, the tariff situation worked out in a way that we will be able to deliver to Kickstarter backers exactly when we promised we would.
Nice. Yeah.
So the digital release was going to be unaffected by that, but the
Right.
physical materials will begin fulfillment in late September. And the Stormlight physical materials will be available in Barnes and Noble in December.
Oh, that's huge.
Oh, right in time for the holiday too.
Yeah,
That's phenomenal.
nationwide.
Jeez.
So yeah, yeah, Johnny's been saying that Barnes and Noble are very excited uh,
I
to
mean,
work with us on
they've
this.
clearly been upping their RPG game, no pun intended. Certainly around here in the Twin Cities, like there's RPG stuff like pretty solid, mainstream, but pretty solid at every one of their
Mhm.
stores. So,
Yeah,
oh wow.
and of course it'll be in friendly local game stores
Of
as
course.
well because
Yep,
you always got to support your LGs.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Mistborn starts to come out in 2026.
Yes, so just to give a little bit of an update on that, we have been in active development of Mistborn
Yeah.
since January of last year, since before we announced it was the Cosmere RPG. We've been working
Yeah.
on the Mistborn books. So that is scheduled to come out roughly a year after
Yeah. Okay.
the Stormlight stuff comes.
Neat. Really neat. Thanks for that.
Wow.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much for spending time with us.
Yeah, we're gonna have Ross back again. I mean, literally, we could say as we indicated, we've been doing some intro outros for the evening. Um,
I don't
literally, the
even know
first
what
thing,
day it is anymore.
yeah, the first thing that you texted, literally moments after we closed it up, was that, I mean, just the most wonderful guy to have
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
as a guest. I mean, just such a joy.
And what a
Um,
cool success story. I mean, it just kind of
yes.
made me, this sounds really cheesy, but it kind of made me happy just listening to his
It did.
story.
No,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really did. I no, I think that's worth, I think that's worth, I want to reinforce that because, in a period of time where there's just, I mean, so much negativity, I came out of that discussion just,
A little bit
not that I
buoyed.
don't, not,
Yeah.
not that I don't come out of any podcast feeling happy, but I really came out of that just feeling good. It
Yeah.
was just fun. I was excited about what I'm seeing with the RPG. It just, and I'm excited about having Ross back to talk more about the dice mechanic and everything else.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Oh, my God.
but as we head over to Loon Cafe,
Yes.
I could give a little tiny update on what I talked about in the last one related to Midnight.
Do
Um,
tell.
but before that, I just wanted to see if you had anything before I did that. Um,
Like on my desk?
Yeah, if you had anything on your desk, I know that you're soon, very soon. I know that lately you have been doing writing on your own.
Yep.
Um, there's other stuff related to writing where I have a small involvement that's
Well,
progressing.
okay.
And but
I
no,
okay,
but
sorry. Go
also
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
you are preparing for some classwork and things like that. So your time is slowly, like, for
For the
extracurricular
next,
type activities is slimming
as we
from now on.
record, I'm assuming the next couple of weeks will be fairly busy, but I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to it. It'll be great. No
Oh
complaints.
yeah.
Um, how about this? I was gonna tell you off air when we were done this evening, but I'll just tease this and the
Okay.
rest of the world, and we can talk about it later.
Okay.
Uh, Aaron and I have been
Hmm?
talking, and
Dr.
we've
Aaron
just
Peterson,
that's
Dr. Aaron Peterson,
never heard of him.
friend
And
friend of the podcast.
we've I think it's fair to say we've decided there is a subsequent project coming.
Good for phenomenal. Now this
Yeah.
is separate from the
No, no,
book you're working on now, which is
this
the
is
sequel to your original leadership in Trek,
this
right?
is totally unrelated. It's still a
Okay.
leadership thing. It'll still be a Trek thing.
Okay.
It'll be you, my friend, have been involved in one of the current projects.
Hmm.
It would be say this will be, in a sense, a response to that project. More coming later. What's on your table?
Jeez. Oh God. Okay. Well, this is going to be a something legit and something a little humorous and maybe a little bit insiderish so that our listeners won't be able to necessarily see the full gist of it. But um
We're just
um
both real cryptic tonight.
yeah, well, of course it's been a long evening. But a fun one. Um,
We'll see.
um, what's funny is that I think I told you I've been, I've got these little mini projects that I've been working on related
Yeah,
to RPG
yeah.
stuff, and I have been a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to use any terminology um, that would that would be rude or anything like that. But I'm not scatterbrained, but I have been multitasking and working little bits on multiple projects because for me, it's helping me kind of like kickstart creative juices. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is I still am working a little bit on the GURPS thing. I still am working a little bit on something else, which I'll talk to you offline about, which I haven't yet talked about. And then I have this two other pronged approach that I'm looking that I would where I talked last week or 2 weeks ago in our last episode about midnight,
Yep, yep.
um, where I've started to look at doing like a one-shot adventure and maybe seeing if the aforementioned Dr. Aaron Peterson would want to join, and maybe our friend Brian would want to join, since they're kind of our little
Yep.
mini gaming crew.
That's the crew right
Um,
now.
maybe Justin would want to join if
Mm-hmm.
he's not traveling
Mm-hmm.
um, as well. I know he would join as time permits for him, but
Right, right.
um, and then along with that, I've been digging more into the Dungeon Crawl Classics realm slash Shadow Dark realm,
Yep.
just because I'm fascinated specifically by those two gaming systems. Um, or Dungeon Crawl Classics has this thing called the funnel. I mentioned this where, um, and I'm not going to get this 100% accurate. So
Okay.
any of the few people that actually listen to this who have ever played this are going to may correct or please correct me. Um, you know, going through the funnel as when you start an adventure or a game, you in effect create 3 or 4 level 0 characters.
Oh yeah. Not yes, yes. You brought this
You
up to
know,
me. Mm-hmm.
and you go through a level 0 adventure, and whoever survives becomes your level 1 character for the subsequent adventures that go along. Um, what's funny is that they came out within the past few years. Goodman Games
Mm-hmm.
came out with the DCC annual. Originally, way back when, they had this idea of coming out with an annual,
Yeah,
like in terms of like updates,
yes.
and then they realized they didn't want to do something like that because they didn't want people to have to continually have to update rules and things like that.
Yep.
So their first ever annual came out 15 years after the game came
They're
out.
decadal.
Yes.
Right.
So I started looking through that along with the DCC thing, the DCC core rulebook.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not ready yet to say that I would love us to do something with Shadow Dark or DCC because Traveler is still hanging out there for us.
But apparently now
Um,
midnight.
yeah, well, Midnight's ahead of the game just because, and who knows if we would ever do something beyond the one shot, other than keeping it on our shelf as a periodic type of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just to get the creative juices flowing again,
Absolutely.
the outside of sci-fi for us.
Yes.
Um, but the idea of playing something that is reminiscent of what it was like for me playing as a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grader,
Yeah, that's cool.
and remember what it was like.
Yep.
Even GMing it fascinates me, and trying to recreate that for you guys is still on my mind. And um, even I even got some help from some people relatively close to me in terms of like potential NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they gave me an idea for
Hmm.
like, and I'll give you just one example. I don't know where this one might come up, but like for example, if you might be traversing like a bridge, and you might end up um, being stopped by like the troll of over verboseness.
Yes. I'm familiar
Um,
with that troll.
and they might attack you if you don't answer certain quizzes or questions correctly.
With
So I'm showing it
sufficient, yes, he's showing a picture of me that my daughter drew on, who's
after
like
who
a
you were
junior in high
napping.
school, but she
Yeah,
was, yeah, I fell asleep on the couch and yes, the
I was.
troll of overt loquaciousness. All
Yeah,
right.
I was
Yeah.
sent this by your
My
lovely spouse,
wife. Yes. Yeah,
and
that's it's great having one
um,
of those. Yeah.
I was told that um, I was told that feel free to share.
No, thanks. Okay,
Um,
stay on target. Stay on target.
yeah,
Okay.
I have not done so, even though that was given to me now.
Yes.
I just wanted you to be aware that was given to me now 3 weeks ago,
Awesome.
and I have not shared it. So, but I will be using it at some point in a game. Um,
Lovely. Well, on
Lovely.
that note,
So, yes, I
yeah.
figured that would be a good ending of the
Nice.
evening.
Thank you. It's thanks, folks. We'll be here all night. Um, so two things moving forward, everybody. Like Brad said, before I stopped listening, he we just with our mutual schedules and with it
Comes the
being
troll. Here
it's
comes
just
the troll.
oh boy. Yeah, we're switching to an all access 24/7 podcast to Brad quietly singing and sometimes whimpering. Okay, so 2 weeks from now we're not going to have a new episode. We're going to give ourselves a little breathing room. So thanks for indulging that. We will, however, have a rerun of a past guest. We're not going to tell you whom. You're just gonna have to come back 2 weeks from now and find out. Now, 4 weeks from now, at the end of July, when Brad and I are back real time, not really, because obviously we're not actually talking to you at the moment. This is recorded. Okay, so that's going to be our 150th episode, which is sort of cool. And I think it's fair to say, Brad, mind-boggling to the two of us.
How many episodes did you actually think we would record before it kind of just ended?
How
You
hurtful
know,
do you want me to be?
I want you to be completely transparent and
When
honest.
we actually this is pretty funny. When
Yeah.
we okay, I don't know if I ever told you this. When we started right more than 4 years ago, when we
Yeah.
started, we planned you.
You've already said this, so it's not
I
like
think I have.
I'm not aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I, what we spent honestly, we spent about 6 months prepping and planning. Planning and prepping. And it was monthly, and we didn't know we were going to end up doing interviews and talking to so many fascinating, wonderful people. Had no idea.
Oh, wait, this is
And
completely different than what we'd
this
anticipated.
and I think it's fair to say, and I know we're going to say this again for 150, this continues to be one of my major joys today. I just
Oh,
absolutely love doing this and love
absolutely.
doing this with you. That said, my estimate was
6?
5 to 6
Okay, I remember that.
max.
Yep.
Max.
Yep.
Yep, you got it. I remember saying to Amy, Brad's totally gonna flake out, but
Mhm.
we'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
And who knew? And like everybody. Again, giving you some inside trading information here. I tend to be the one who keeps us like on schedule and on
Yep.
track planning wise, like right,
Absolutely.
which is funny because I do all of the project management for the podcast, 100%. But
Hmm.
you actually are trained in doing it. I've
Yep.
just been winging it. But anytime, and I never ever really say anything, but like any time where I think, well, maybe we're nearing the end, or maybe we need a refresh or whatever, countless times over the past 4 years, it's been you who had been thinking, and what do you think? Right? Like it's been you who's been on top of we need to do X, Y, or Z, which is kind of funny because it's kind of reverse roles in real life. Like usually I'm the one who's like, "Oh, squirrel, let's talk about something different." And you're like, "Here's how to do it in real life." And that's just how we
Sorry, that's
work.
funny. We'll talk about this at 150, but I
Yeah.
don't see. See that's so funny. I don't see you as a squirrel. I think we're both attuned, and then I'll leave it. We're
Hmm.
both attuned where just when we feel like things might just get a little bit stale and we need to tweak something, and it might not even be something people see. Um,
It's invariably you.
we will.
Invariably. Yeah.
Yeah, but it will be something where you're like, you know what? Yeah,
Yep.
and it's something usually it's something that if it hasn't been in mind of yours, it's about
Mm,
ready to.
I think you're
Yeah,
giving me too much credit with that, but we'll talk about that
yeah,
next. We'll talk about that for 150.
yeah.
All right. So with that, everybody, uh, be well, stay well. We'll sort of see you in 2 weeks, and we will be back full force in 4 weeks for episode 150. 145 more than we expected.